Imagine a world where the United States never existed, where the dream of democracy never took root, and history took a completely different path. This was almost a reality, until one man stepped forward to change everything. That man was George Washington, a leader who risked everything to carve a nation out of uncertainty, war, and chaos. His story is not just one of war and politics, but of resilience, sacrifice, and an unshakable vision for the future. This is the tale of how a soldier became a leader, how a leader became a legend, and how that legend built America. Born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, George Washington was not born into great wealth or nobility. Unlike the European rulers of his time, he did not inherit a throne or an empire. Instead, he was raised in a simple plantation household, where he learned the values of hard work, discipline, and honor. As a young boy, Washington developed a passion for the wilderness and adventure. He trained as a surveyor, mapping the vast and untamed lands of colonial America. This work exposed him to the rugged landscape that he would one day fight to protect. But it was not just geography that shaped him. His first real lessons in leadership came through war. At just 22 years old, Washington was thrust into the violent conflicts of the French and Indian War, which lasted from 1754 to 1763. This brutal war, fought between the British and French over control of North America, became his first real test as a military leader. Though young and inexperienced, Washington quickly proved himself on the battlefield. He survived deadly ambushes, learned the strategies of both European and Native American warfare, and developed an understanding of how a weaker army could outthink and outmaneuver a stronger one. This experience would later prove invaluable when he faced the might of the British Empire, the most powerful military force in the world. But first he had to answer a greater call. By the 1770s, the American colonies were on the brink of revolt. British taxation and oppressive rule had pushed the colonists to their breaking point. In 1775, the first shots of the American Revolution were fired, and suddenly, the fight for independence had begun. The newly formed Continental Congress needed a commander to lead their ragtag army against the British. They turned to George Washington, a man known for his bravery, discipline, and unyielding sense of duty. But leading this war would not be easy. His army was poorly trained. They lacked weapons and supplies. The British had superior numbers, firepower, and experience. Despite these odds, Washington did something extraordinary. He used guerrilla warfare, strategic retreats, and psychological tactics to keep the revolution alive. One of his toughest challenges came during the harsh winter at Valley Forge, from 1777 to 1778. Thousands of his soldiers were dying from starvation and disease. Morale was at an all-time low, but Washington refused to give up. Instead, he rallied his men, trained them in new combat tactics, and turned them into a disciplined army. This resilience led to the war's turning point, the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. With the help of the French, Washington's forces trapped the British army, forcing their surrender. Against all odds, America had won its independence. But the story was far from over. After the war, Washington could have taken absolute power. Many even wanted him to become king, but Washington refused. Instead, he shocked the world by resigning as commander-in-chief in 1783 and returning to his home in Mount Vernon. His act of stepping down proved that he valued democracy over personal power, something unheard of at the time. However, America was not yet stable. The young nation was weak, divided, and politically fragile. A new form of government was needed. In 1787, Washington was called upon once again to lead, not in war, but in peace. He presided over the Constitutional Convention, helping to draft the U.S. Constitution. His wisdom, leadership, and reputation ensured that the new government would be built on the principles of liberty, justice, and unity. When it came time to elect the first president, there was only one clear choice: George Washington. In 1789, Washington became the first president of the United States. There was no roadmap, no precedent. He had to build the role from scratch. During his 2 terms, from 1789 to 1797, he established the presidential cabinet, including leaders like Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. He created financial policies that stabilized the nation's economy. He set the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power. He maintained neutrality in global conflicts to protect the young republic. Perhaps his most powerful act was his farewell address in 1796, where he warned against political division and foreign entanglements, lessons that still hold relevance today. Then, in another act of unprecedented humility, he stepped down after 2 terms, refusing to hold on to power. This single decision ensured that America would remain a democracy and not fall into dictatorship. After leaving office, Washington returned to Mount Vernon, hoping to live the rest of his life in peace. But in 1799, at the age of 67, he fell ill and passed away. His death was mourned across the nation. He was not just a president or a general. He was the foundation upon which America was built. Even today, his name is everywhere. Washington, D.C., Mount Rushmore, the dollar bill, the Washington Monument. A reminder that without his courage, wisdom, and leadership, the United States might not exist. George Washington was not just the first American president. He was the man who built America. He fought for it, shaped its government, and ensured that power would belong to the people, not a king. He proved that true leadership is not about holding power. It's about knowing when to let it go. And that is why, more than 200 years later, his story still inspires the world.